Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a very special episode. It is a This Is Not a Top 10 in the vintage style of Rams videos. And this is actually going to be on the note of Cypress. Now, if you followed my channel, you know a couple things. You know that number one, I have continuously said over and over again, I think Cypress is an underrated note and an underused note. It's traditionally used in masculine perfumery, so it usually adds this sort of clean, woody, green, almost similar to cedar or pine. If you like fragrances, like for example, the great Polo Green from 1978 by Carlos Benaim. If you like fragrances like Fila Nagil by Serge Lutens, you'll probably like some of the Cypress heavy perfumes we're going to talk about today. Neither of these actually list a Cypress note, but I wouldn't be surprised. There is a chord you could maybe pick out in these sort of green fragrances. Even though it's not listed, if you like Cypress and you haven't smelled either of those, there's those and many other pine heavy fragrances I would urge you to check out. But today we're going to focus on the note of Cypress. And Cypress does differ from pine. It differs from pine in the way of this sort of extra medicinal freshness that Cypress gives. It also really reminds me of vintage perfumery, and once we get to some of these fragrances that are Cypress heavy and really known for their Cypress, we'll talk about some of that. It's a note that really inspired the great Tom Ford, and there is a fragrance in here I think that really made Tom Ford into the person he is today. One of the most inspirational fragrances in his life is on this list. So let's talk about Cypress. I think it's an amazing note. It adds that sort of earthy, medicinal, sterile, when you take a deep breath in the winter cold, and the back of your throat when you take that deep breath almost has this wintergreen, cold-like quality, right? That is sort of the way Cypress feels in perfumes to me. Now, many people will say that it's a bit less reminiscent of winter as pine, for example, but Cypress definitely gives me colder weather vibes as well. And I really like the medicinal, almost sterile aspect of Cypress, right? So today, this is actually a subscriber request video, I should mention as well. I had a subscriber reach out and say, hey, going through your old This Is Not a Top 10 video, I've never seen one done specifically on the note of Cypress. And I said, that's a great idea. I was actually looking for a video idea. So I do try and listen to you guys where applicable. These videos take a long time to take everything out, talk about them, put everything away, upload the video, leave the notes in there. So I really do appreciate everyone watching. All the kind things that you guys do, leaving comments and all that stuff is very much appreciated. So let's talk about fragrances in my collection that have a Cypress note according to Parfumo. Some of these are going to be full bottles. Some of them are going to be decants or samples. Some of them I've done full videos on. Some of them have videos coming very soon. So my shirt is actually very Cypress-like today. I just noticed that. Okay, so let's talk about my scent of the day first. Scent of the day is a fragrance that is actually a gift from one of you. Very kind subscriber, friend of the channel, Dushan, sent me this. This is Oriza El Legrand's Peau d'Espagne. And this is a 2022 release. I'm a little torn on the tassel because I like the tassel, but it's so low that when you sit a bottle next to it, if this is like on, the shelf, it'll be on the tassel. And so sometimes you pull this and it pushes the other bottle. I don't know. I think the tassel is a good idea, but it needs better thought execution-wise. But this is a good fragrance, but I think it's my least favorite Oriza El Legrand I've smelled so far. I did a couple videos on some of their scents, and they have some amazing perfumes, some absolutely amazing fragrances. Chypre Mousse is fantastic, full bottle worthy for sure. And but this is still a good perfume. It's vervain, rose, bergamot, neroli, lavender, carnation, clove, sandalwood, birch, styrax, and benzoin. And so the leather in here is more done in the styrax style of leather fragrances. It's a Spanish leather, obviously, but it opens up spicy, almost like, see how this has like a reflection on it, right? It almost opens up like a reflected leather It's a little weird to describe, like a spicy reflected leather. I'll have to dig more into it. This is the first time I'm wearing it as my scent of the day. I did enjoy it. Not my favorite Oriza El Legrand, but it's a solid brand. Oriza El Legrand is one of those niche brands that doesn't get enough love. Okay, so speaking of fragrances that do not get enough love, this is now discontinued because the industry did not show it enough love, and it is a fantastic fougere. It's actually one of my favorite modern fougere fragrances of all time. One of the best office fragrances there is. It's from the House of Amouage, and it is Bracken Man. So the fact that this is discontinued really pulls at my heartstrings, because I really feel like this is such a great modern fougere. Like, I don't think you could do a modern fougere better than this. And you know, the first time I smelled this, I had this reaction of, wait, this is not an Amouage. But the more I gave it a chance and wore it, the more I realized this does everything you expect from an Amouage at the time when Christopher Chong was running the show. This is a brave, daring release because there is a ton of clove in the top with cypress. So beautiful provincial lavender, clove, and cypress. And so if you like traditional fougères, if you like things like Fougère Royale and stuff like that, I would highly urge you to check out Bracken Man. You can see the fern on the front. And so even though this isn't the oriental release style that you're used to smelling from Amouage, this still has all of the same bravery and heart that Christopher Chong put into all of his releases. So Bracken Man, perfumed by Olivier Cresp and Fabrice Pellegrin, is the first one on the Cypress list. Second one is a little bit of a gem. I think if you go try to buy this on eBay, you'll pay like $1,000 or $2,000. It's insane, but this is from the House of Oriza Ladore, and this is Russian Musk. I have a full review of this on the channel. They just put out a Russian Musk 2, which I smelled. Go check out my live stream on the House of Oriza Ladore's new classics collection if you would like. But this is real musk. And so the way that Russian Adam described this fragrance to me is that they actually used even higher grade materials than they did in Siberian Musk and Inverno Russo, which are my two favorites. But for some reason, with the higher grade materials, or the more expensive materials, I should say, came this sort of soft elegance about the fragrance. So I think many people who smell this fragrance, who are used to the Oriza Ladore DNA, are a little disappointed because this doesn't have this huge projection, and it's not super animalic. It's slightly animalic, but not super animalic. It's more really smooth with that pine and cypress. It's very green. It's definitely the most green of the musk scents that he did. My favorite are the ones that are more animalic. This is a little bit more green. Like, you know, it blends in with my shirt, actually. But the, think of the Russian winter thought in your mind, right? With snow on the trees, the pine and cypress trees, with real deer musk and a little bit of oud, but lots of like fir balsams and pine and very smooth sandalwood. This is another amazing office scent. So the first two are just amazing office scents. And that is Oriza Ladore's Russian Musk. Okay, next on the list is going to be probably the worst fragrance on this list. I really despise this fragrance. I'm going to review it and bash it one day, but because if you go search for this fragrance, you're going to find all the influencers hyping it up. It's probably one of the most hyped fragrances by this house from this particular line, and this is called Wanted by Night. So this is a 2018 release by the House of Azzaro. They say mandarin orange, cinnamon, cumin, frankincense, Virginia cedar, cedar wood, tobacco absolute, and cypress. So I blind bought this based on the note listing, and I was very disappointed because I get a lot of this generic designer sweetness from this. That generic sweetness, you know what I'm talking about, that generic designer sweetness that you kind of smell everywhere. So not a fan, to be honest with you, not a fan at all. It's nowhere near like what I was expecting when I bought this, but I did buy this years ago. And so, you know, nowadays, no way would I ever buy this, but I did buy it back then just because of the note listing, and I heard people talking about it on YouTube, and I got sold on it. But I'll review that one day and bash the shit out of it. But technically, there is a cypress note in the base, although you're not going to get much but sweet, generic-smelling woods and very sweet-smelling tobacco absolute is what they say. And vanilla is really what I get. Quinton Biche and Michel Girard are the perfumers. Quinton Biche is a good perfumer, but that one is just a huge letdown for me. One that is not a huge letdown for me is a fragrance that I have a review on the channel, thanks to my good friend Rich Mitch, and all I have is a sample, but this is full bottle worthy. If you like crazy, challenging fragrances, this is Rake and Ruin by the house of Beaufort, London. And this came out in 2018. This is an absolutely insane fragrance. I think I described this as being on a ship, coming over, and, you know, imagine coming over like in the 1700s, right? From England to America. And just imagine it being like a merchant ship. So it's full of wood, boxes, and cargo and stuff like that. And the men were eating like dried biscuit, but they're sitting there drinking their eyes out because they're on a ship for months to get to the new world, let's say. And all of a sudden, pirates try to attack the ship. So they fire the cannons, the smoke is in the air. There's this dry, woody, animalic castoreum that I absolutely love in here. It's smoky with cade oil and angelica, so it's kind of green and bitter, and there's licorice, and it's just an insane fragrance. But I absolutely love these type of fragrances. So one of my favorites from the house of Rake and Ruin, or from the house of Beaufort, sorry, it's called Rake and Ruin. I wish I had a full bottle of that over the one I actually have a full bottle of, which I will show you as soon as we rehydrate. Today we are doing Aquafina. It was free from work, so what can you say? It's not Fiji, but it will get the job done. So that is Beaufort's Rake and Ruin. Next one on the list was Cypress. And there is a cypress note in the mid, but it's kind of mixed with Costus, by the way, going back to Rake and Ruin. And these other animalic notes, it's just such a crazy fragrance. You do get a little bit of this green aspect because of the pine needle and cypress and stuff like that, but it's blended with violet, iris, labdanum, lots of labdanum in there, and smoky notes and woody notes. It's just a crazy, love Rake and Ruin. This one I struggle with. And since I already tried Rake and Ruin, I figured, you know what? Let me buy Tanere, which used to be called 1805. They rebranded it to Tanere. And this is smoky and woody with a ton of gunpowder and blood in the top. So go back to that battle I was telling you about. The pirates come on the boat. The cannons have been fired. The gunpowder is in the air. But instead of, you know, just the Rake and Ruin aspect I was telling you about earlier with the gin and all the other notes that go into it, the dry, smoky woodiness, this one goes into this bloody brandy with cypress in the top, more dry woods, and birch. And so it's like gunpowder and birch. It's super smoky. And that blood note in the top is very strange. It's almost like Horatio Nelson boarded your ship and just chopped the guy next to you right down, and you're just standing there with your brandy in hand and just drinking it with the gunpowder, waiting to be chopped down by the sword of a legend like Horatio Nelson, right? That is the vibe of Tenere, and it's very challenging. I'm not writing this fragrance off. I'm just saying I took much easier to Rake and Ruin, which says something. If you know the fragrance Rake and Ruin, that really says something. So the cypress notes in the top here, along with gin, lemon, and spindrift. So this is just a crazy fragrance, but I like these type of fragrances. So shout out to Beaufort for creating this type of interesting perfumery. Okay, next on the list is a much easier wear from the house of Cerutti, and this is the 2005 version of 1881 Porom. So 1881 Porom is sort of a fresh, woody. Martin Gras created this version they give credit to. But I want to say the original 1881 was Raymond Chaillan. I can't remember exactly. I think it was Raymond Chaillan and Martin Gras. But this is cypress, bergamot, blackcurrant, patchouli, ylang ylang, oak moss, pine, and sandalwood. And it's a very fresh, sort of almost a citrusy, fresh, woody wear. Slightly fruity because of the blackcurrant. Imagine like a fresher cypress and with citruses in here. Good fragrance, but slightly floral as well because of the ylang ylang. But I wish I knew the original version of this from the early 90s. I'm sure there's differences. This one was actually created by Coty. Yeah, Coty Prestige. So I would love to see what the older version before the 2005 reform was. I heard it's just a heavier, denser version, that the 2005 stays pretty true to what the fragrance is supposed to be. They just made it lighter and airier, but I've never smelled the vintage. But that is Cerruti 1881 Porom. Okay, next we're going to do a decant. I'll be doing a review on this fragrance probably next year when the warm weather rolls around again, unless we get another 90-degree day. But this is from the house of Chanel, and this is Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme. So probably one of their best-selling mass appealing fragrances, right? So you go to Macy's and this is what's kind of out on the counter. $130, you get yourself 100 mils of this or whatever it is, 150. This is just way too, there is technically cypress in the top and it is peppery, but this is just like a tonka bean musk bomb to me. And people love it. Like if you're someone who wears fragrances for other people, to please people, people love this stuff. And you know what? The hotter it is, the better this fragrance seems to smell. You can see I've given it a fair amount of testing, but I wanted it to be kind of very warm whenever I review it. So the review may have to wait till next year, but we'll see. Maybe I can sneak it in. But Chanel's Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme. Very, very sweet, though. Way too sweet for me. Okay, now here's one that I've talked about on the channel a lot. This is from Clive Christian, and this is in the now infamous Ostrich Box, me lord. Oh, yes, Ostrich Box. This is C for Men. So C for Men is discontinued according to Parfumo. So I'm very glad to have, 60% of the bottle, whatever I have left here. 2010 release, Christian Provenzano is the perfumer. And this is very similar to Tuscan Leather. It's like Tuscan Leather Extreme, okay? It does have some other notes in here. There's things like mate tea. There is oud, which there's technically no oud in Tuscan Leather, but it doesn't smell much different is the thing. Very slight differences. I think maybe there's a little bit of elemi resin in here. Maybe the frankincense is a little more lemony, and it doesn't have... It's very hard to pick out the differences. They are so close. So Tuscan Leather came out in 2007. This came out in 2010. And I really like this fragrance. As you can see from the dent I put in it. I can't wait for it to get cold so I can wear the piss out of this. But the cypress note is in the base. But this is one of those cypress notes where it just gets drowned out by the rest of the, by the rest of the fragrance. You're going to have a hard time picking out the cypress. But if you like Tuscan Leather, give Clive Christian C a try if you want something a little different. Okay, next on the list is going to be a Dior, a very underrated Dior as well. And under the radar, and it is Dior's Higher. This actually should be higher rated. It's one of the better pear fragrances. This has both pear in the top and pear tree wood. The vintages look like this. Apparently, it's still available in the new bottles that kind of look like the bottles they put the new Dior Jules in. But this is what the older bottles look like. This has a little bit of a sci-fi. You ever seen Michael Jackson's Scream video? Him and Janet Jackson on the spaceship screaming and mirrors breaking and shit like that. Reminds me of the way Higher feels. Very fresh and citrusy. There's those citrusy pear notes in the top. Fruity in the top, but it dries down to a rosemary, which can be slightly oily, spices, and cypress with pear tree wood and musk in the base. And that white musk gives it this very clean. So again, if you like fresher takes on a cypress fragrance, well, I wouldn't even call this a cypress fragrance, but if you like your cypress notes to be mixed with fresher notes, check out Dior's Higher. So I will review this one of these days because it deserves a review. But again, I think it deserves it in the summer. That's a summery wear for me. Okay, next on the list is going to be a Dipti. And this is probably one of the most popular sandalwood fragrances. And there is sandalwood in here. But if you go look up the notes in Parfumo, it says Mysore sandalwood in for the Eau de Parfum of Dipti on Parfumo. And... I mean, what do you even say to that? So, when you corner these houses, they say, well, we are saying that it smells like a Mysore sandalwood. You're like, nah, that's just kind of shady, I think. But who knows? Maybe they did the oud trick and put the tiniest drop of real Mysore sandalwood in there, but I wouldn't think Dipti is out there buying real Mysore sandalwood, personally. Not at this price point. Not when you can get 100 mils for under $150. It's just unthinkable. But they claim Mysore sandalwood with cedar, cypress, and coriander. And this is actually a pretty good take on a woody cypress, because it has the cedar and the sandalwood, and this is a beautiful, to be fair, I don't think there's any real sandalwood. Like if you cornered me and said, Ramsey, is there real sandalwood in there? I would say, nah, there's no real sandalwood. It smells like the synthetic sandalwood accords that you've smelled many a times, but it's very well done. Like whenever I want a sandalwood, just kind of relaxing note, I don't mind putting this on before bed. I'll review this one of these days. Tam Dao from 2012 by Dipti. Danielle Molière is the perfumer. Okay, now here's one that really took me by storm. I love this fragrance. It's discontinued, but I'm so happy to have a bottle. I think it's the best Fendi fragrance for women ever created, and this is called Fendi. Base Notes shows this came out in 85. Parfumos shows 87, so they do not agree. But this is a floral, spicy, aldehydic, old school Chypre. Huge oriental style Chypre, if you will, with lots of leather in the base and spices. And you know what? I want to spray this. I'm going to get a, don't go anywhere. I am going to get a spray strip because I want to spray this. Let me make a note of it. Fendi. It's been a while since I've sprayed this bad boy. Oh. The atomizer is fantastic. Oh my God. It opens up so much, like, oh, it's so complex. I mean, as far as like complex old school perfumery, it is very floral, even from the get-go, but I get a lot of, like, imagine an aldehydic mandarin orange. Beautiful rosewood note. Beautiful spices like cardamom. And that green cypress note is not a note you find very often in women's perfumery. But remember, this was the mid-'80s. Man, what they did for women's fragrances in the 80s, stuff like Teatro alla Scala, stuff like this, I mean, God, I wish they made perfume like this nowadays, you know. This is so good, so complex. I would have no problem wearing this, although the extra floral aspect, because there's a lot of florals in here. There's carnation, geranium, rose, ylang ylang, jasmine, and lily of the valley. And it's an old school, huge aldehydic floral Chypre. It's got this ambery oriental touch in the dry down too. Oh man, this is so good. But yeah, if you're gonna notice, many of these fragrances are marketed towards men. This is one of the few that's marketed towards women. Firmenich made this, but I don't know which perfumers worked on it. So good. Fantastic stuff by Fendi. So that's the best women's Fendi fragrance, in my opinion. The best men's Fendi fragrance, there's not even anything else close to this. This thing's so far in the lead, it's lapping other Fendi fragrances. This is Fendi Uomo. And like Chris from Scentland said, look how big this bottle, it just sits there, just like, ugh. You know, look at me. And it does. Beautiful sort of marble outer shell, if you will. There's different versions of this. I think they're all good. Mine is Fendi Profumi SPA Firenze, but I know there's different ones, Bethco and stuff like that. But this is my favorite Fendi, period. Like if you said, Ramsey, what's your favorite Fendi? This one, 100%. It does remind a little bit of Moschino Uomo, which came out a couple years after this. It also reminds a little bit of Trussardi Uomo, which came out 5 years before this. This came out in '88, so it has that sort of earthy, leathery, spicy '80s. You know, if you like things like Bel Ami, I would urge you to check out Fendi Wo. There is a little bit of lavender in the top with all of these spices, marjoram, angelica. So it's got that earthy greenness in the beginning, coriander. It doesn't have as much of that grandmother's spice kitchen as Trussardi Uomo does. But they've mixed this with iris. So there's iris and cypress in the heart with old school carnation, a beautiful cinnamon note, and a little bit of castoreum. I think there's a bit of castoreum in the base with that leather because it is slightly animalic, but just slightly, not as much as some of the, you know, 80s animalic powerhouses, but it really focuses on this Italian spicy leather aspect, like a leather chypre. But what a fragrance Fendi Uomo is. Both of these Fendis are discontinued. Both of them have cypress in the heart notes. And they're both worth sniffing. I will tell you that right now. If you made me pick one, I'd pick Fendi Uomo. But my God, this Fendi for women. Crazy. Crazy good. So I think the one that you want to avoid is the one made by Elizabeth Arden. I think if you can get the ones that either look like mine, Firenze, or the one that says Beth Co., I think you're good to go. Okay, next on the list, staying in the Italian houses. This is a beautiful, so Fendi Uomo for leather, and Pontaccio 21 by the house of Gianfranco F. And Pontaccio 21, can you, by the way, can you say Gianfranco F without going Gianfranco F? I mean, it feels so natural. So this is the suede fragrance, is the way I think about this. This is the suede fragrance, one of my all-time favorite suede fragrances. It's got this spicy, leathery sort of attribute about it. Lots of cardamom and oily, slightly smoky smelling rosemary with that cypress note in the heart. And the cypress note in the heart here is, I would say if you're a big cypress fan, even though this leans to the woodier, you know, it's got this myrrh in the base, so it's slightly resinous and warm, and it's got a lot of patchouli in the base with the suede and a little bit of angelica as well. I mentioned angelica and a couple other fragrances previously, but I would put an asterisk next to this one. The cypress in this one, you can pick it out. This is a very complex fragrance. I think, even though my good friend Thomas from Early Greek, whose nose I absolutely respect, like I will put respect on Thomas's name. He is one of like, if I had to go toe to toe or just talk perfume with someone for 5 hours, him and Rich Mitch and Jonathan 1970, those kind of guys would be the ones I would recommend, or the ones I would, you know, love to just talk shop with for hours. But his favorite is Gianfranco F for Man from '86. And while I really like that fragrance, everything is very heavy and thick in that fragrance. I think that Pontaccio 21 from '99 actually beats the Gianfranco F from '86 or whatever it is. So, which is crazy, because usually the 80s fragrances are like, for me, win, 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 win. But this one, there is something really, really special about this. And don't judge it by the smelling the atomizer, because the cap on this smells like you're smelling Chernobyl death. It's so bad. The cheapest, shittiest Italian leather you could ever, or Italian rubber, plastic you could ever imagine. Okay, next on the list is a proper fougere, spicy, woody, old school fougere. It is Zeus by the house of Givenchy. And this is sort of one of the underrated fougères of the 80s. Just a very classical fougere structure. Very well done by Alberto Morillas. Oh, it's funny because if you smell these old Alberto Morillas fragrances, like if you smell this, or you smell Sybaris, or some of these other fragrances that he made, he did that one from the house of Cafe. Oh, shit, it's going to drive me crazy. Oh, man, it was this one. Homme de Café. I think this was one of his earliest fragrances from the early 70s. But you smell some of his early work, And you don't even recognize modern Alberto Morillas. That man is not in his earlier work. It is like a completely different perfumer. And this is fantastic. This is extremely complex. There's tarragon, one of my top secret notes. Lots of lavender and mace and just a ton of notes in here with cypress in the heart. And of course it dries down to this sprucey. There's another note that's underused. Spruce. Spruce in perfume is another one. This has a balsam spruce note with cedar and this sort of leathery, so imagine like a leathery fougere dry down in the traditional old school sense. Like if you like stuff like this, Bally Masculine, I would urge you to try something like Zeus. I mean, they're different, but they play in the same sandbox, if you will. So yes, Zeus by the house of Givenchy from 86. Next on the list, and again, these are unranked, don't forget. So this is not a rank list. This is just the old school style, kicking the shit, talking about perfume. Next on the list is a Gucci fragrance, which I actually have a full review of on the channel. This is called Gucci Rush for Men from the year 2000. You can see it right there, Gucci Rush. So I have a full review of this on the channel. If you want to check that out, you absolutely can. I had to super glue this front plate on because it kept falling off like a cheap piece of shit every time I pulled it out. But this is woody, spicy, and if you like that fresh cypress note, I would urge you to try this. This is very light. It reminds me of, you know, those old school iPods, not the iPhones, but the iPods, the old white ones with the giant wheel on the front. That's what the marketing kind of reminds me of. I think Tom Ford was very forward-looking when he was creative director at Gucci, and lots of different woods and musks, and slightly smoky. Go check out my review if you want to learn more, but the cypress is in the top with the lavender, and it's very, very good. Okay, so unfortunately we got to hurry because we have a lot of fragrances to talk about still. Next on the list, we have a sample, an official brand sample that I'm going to talk about from the house of Gucci. Unfortunately, you're just going to have to take my word of what this is. I know what this is. It is Gucci by Gucci Sport Porom from 2010. Discontinued, but mandarin orange, grapefruit, cypress, cardamom, juniper berry, fig, patchouli, vetiver, and ambrette. And actually, I've smelled this. I put a little drop on my skin. This is a good fragrance. This is a good fragrance. No one gets excited about sport fragrances, but I'm telling you, this is a good one. Okay, next on the list is going to be another discontinued fragrance by the house of Guy Laroche, and this is called Horizon. So Horizon, these are actually distributed by Cosmere. I don't know if you can see that, but if you go to the very bottom line, Cosmere Inc. There it is. And I've got like 4 of these, and I got all 4 for like $18. All 4. Something crazy like that. They were just like, here, take them. No one wants these. And this is a good fragrance. It's very green. It does have some notes like sea salt and stuff like that that reminds of an aquatic, but it's not as aquatic as you would seem because there's a ton of green notes in here, like bay leaf, fennel, galbanum, thyme, artemisia, oak moss, and that's how I like my oceanic fragrances. I like it when they have oak moss, when they were still using oak moss. The early oceanic fragrances are some of my favorites. And cypress. And again, if you like cypress, you can put a little bit of an asterisk next to this one if you like your fresh cypress. We're going to get to the heavier ones coming up right now, but Horizon is definitely worth a sniff if you're a cypress fan. Alain Astori is the perfumer. Worth a sniff for sure. Man, I'm smelling this Fendi Wo from here. It's so, oh, that creamy floral, so good. It's really coming through now. That would smell absolutely boss on a powerful woman. That would smell so sexy. Okay, next on the list is, you got your asterisk marking pen out. This is maybe the most important fragrance on this list to me, because this is the one that set in motion the Tom Ford, who did a little bit of a copy of this, and then the Roja that did a copy of both to me. Not a copy, but an inspired by, if that makes sense. And this is Halston Z14. So I've got multiple bottles of this. This is the closest one that was at hand, so I grabbed it. And if you take a look at the bottom, you can see it's made in France, which is very, very unusual. Most Halston fragrances, being an American brand, are made in the USA. So I don't know if this is just a really old bottle. It's also a splash, which I know they stopped making, but this is a made in France bottle. This is fantastic. I mean, one of the greatest masculines of all time that no one talks about. One of the most influential masculines of all time. This inspired not only the Tom Ford, which we will talk about, but this inspired also, and even though there's no Cypress listed in the note listing, if you're a fan of Cypress, I would urge you to get your nose on this. This is Valentino's Vendetta Porom. Discontinued. Thank you, Justin, for this bottle, by the way. It was a gift, but fantastic. I really like wearing this. I like wearing both of these, actually. But if you like Cypress, even though Cypress isn't in the note listing on Valentino's Vendetta Porom, I would urge you to check it out. It's slightly, there's a bay rum note in there and some other things that are not in Z14, but Z14 is kind of the one that really inspired. Like when you went to clubs in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, this is what the guys were wearing. A lot of them were saying, we weren't wearing polo green. That was for the rich guys. We weren't wearing Chanel Antaeus or stuff like that. A lot of guys, when they went to the clubs, they wore this. They wore Z14. And so this is Basil Cypress in the very beginning. And it instantly blends with the cinnamon, the cinnamony patchouli. It's a very warm, spicy, woody fragrance. And I love that red hot feeling to the cinnamon, and I think that this is a very underrated fragrance. I think the reason is it was at discounters and throwaway rack stores for so long. You could buy this at Ross, you could buy this at TJ Maxx, you could buy this at all these types of places where people overlooked it because it was $10. You know, it was $8.99 or something, and they're like, oh, that's shit fragrance. It's not. Max Gavari and Vincent Marcello created this, and Z14, get your asterisk the hell out of Z14. The older the bottle, the better. So the new stuff that was by Elizabeth Arden or whatever it was, I would skip that if you can. Try to get the one that said Fine Fragrances Inc. Or there was also Original Halston. Like this one is distributed by, just says Parfums Halston. So if you can find Parfums Halston or Fine Fragrances Inc., that would be the two I would probably tell you to look for. Although if you just want to get a sense for it, there's nothing wrong with buying the Elizabeth Arden version, the EA version. It's just it kind of lost a step. Okay, the only other women's fragrance on this list, actually that's not true. There's one more coming. But this is one of the few women's fragrances on this list that has the note of cypress, and this is called Kesh by Hermes. So again, I owe this a review before it's all said and done. This is a Guy Robert classic for women. Not my favorite type of fragrance, but I definitely respect this for what it is, for the classic that it is. It's a floral chypre, and you know, Guy Robert made gold, Amouroud Gold and Gold Man, and holds a very special place in my heart. I did a perfumer's portfolio video on him, Guy Robert, the perfumer, the man. You can go check that out. But Kesh has cypress in the top with aldehyde. So what's interesting about this is when you smell it, it's a very aldehydic fragrance. So if you like things like Chanel No. 5 or stuff like that, you know, this is in that aldehydic floral range. And even when it came out in 61, I think it was maybe even a little bit, you have to remember there was a fragrance that came out in the 50s by Hermes called Douglas. And Douglas, I think, kind of set the stage for Kesh. I would love to smell Douglas one day. It's a true unicorn, rare, impossible to find. But, you know, this is a very well done floral chypre that kind of blends into this, you know, woody, ambery little bit of vetiver. So is vetiver. There's cypress in here. There's beautiful iris in here. I mean, Kesh, don't, just because it's a floral chypre, don't let that put you off, guys. I think it's worth a smell, worth a sniff. Probably the one that's geared more towards the fellows, the guys who, like me, you know, prefer to wear more masculine fragrances out and about. This is Rocobar by Hermes. That's another one. I can't just say Rocobar. It has to be Rocobar. And Rocobar is basically, Rocobar has cypress. It smells like a, it smells like you're kind of outdoors in the forest, if that makes sense, right? So Rocobar smells like you are out and about in the woods, smelling the mosses, the cedar, the woods, and then you sort of wrap it all in this like benzoin burrito, right? It literally feels like you do get the green, you get the spices. I think there's maybe some juniper and coriander in the top, and cardamom, so you get the spices. But again, if you like cypress, I would urge you to put Rocobar on the list. And you don't have to go for the vintage bottle like I have. You can get the newer stuff. The modern stuff is just fine as far as my understanding of Rocobar. It wasn't hit hard with reformulation. But you do have to be prepared for that vanillic benzoin burrito, like I said. Now, Jean-Claude Ellena was involved in this, but he was not the only perfumer. There was Giles Ramy and Bernard Bourgeois, were the other two perfumers. So this is before Jean-Claude Ellena became in-house perfumer at Hermes. Okay, next on the list is going to be a sample, and it's a sample that I have a full review of on the channel. This is from the house of January Scent Project, and actually John Beeble was kind enough to come on the channel. These are very interesting scents because they're very unique, and you can go check out my review. They really inspired some imagery in my head whenever I smelled these scents. Very strong imagery, and I mean, what more can you ask for when you smell something different? But there is a little bit of a thread that tends to run between them, but they're all different but alike, if that makes sense. And if you go watch my reviews, you'll kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. This particular one that uses cypress is called Selpernicou. Selpernicou. And this is a little bit of a weird one because it's the milky one. It's the one that has that sort of milky chamomile, petitgrain, buttery-like feel, but it's mixed with cypress, which gives it the green, and then Immortelle, which can sometimes come across as slightly curried. You know, think of dry, like hay, crinkly, dry grasses and stuff like that, and tobacco, and sandalwood and cardamom and apricot. So it's like a buttery, milky, fruity, spicy, fruity, woody fragrance. Very strange, but I enjoyed the weirdness from, there's some unique things that January Scent Project has done. And Selpernicou, if you are one that likes the cypress, is definitely worth a sniff. Okay, next on the list is going to be, if you have your pen out, I'm going to tell you to mark all three of these. Every single one of these is worth a sniff. If you're a big cypress fan and you want a fragrance that cypress plays a big part, Nathalie Lorson created 3 cheapies. You can get all 3 for less than $100 at discounters total, not for each one. All 3 of these you can get for under $100. This one of my favorite vetiver perfumes of all time. It is Enre Noir, which basically translates to black ink. And God, what a fragrance, man! It's unbelievable how cheap. How I don't understand how you can get a fragrance such as this for so little money. Earthy, woody, the cypress and vetiver acetate is right there from the beginning with the bourbon vetiver and Haitian vetiver, and then cashmere woods, and musk. Nathalie Lorson is kind of the master of this peppery, spicy, musky, you know, breakdown in her fragrances. She loves using cashmere, cashmeran, and musk. And she did it to perfection here because the cypress almost works in conjunction with the vetiver in a way that for somehow, some way, you know, it does give you that dark, earthy, brooding aspect, you know, very rooty vetiver. But somehow the cypress just works in here. And it's a great representation of not just the note of vetiver, but also the note of cypress. So that is Enre Noir by the house of Lalique. And then, so that was 2006. 2013, they put out a flanker, and it was called Enre Noir Sport. And so they added a grapefruit note and a lavender note. They kept the cypress and the bourbon and Haitian vetiver. They also added aquatic notes, so it's a little bit, you know, you would think this is the one fragrance that no way in hell is it ever going to get a sport flanker because Enre Noir is so dark and deep, and yet it kept the heart of the fragrance. So they kept the cashmere woods, the musk, the cypress, and the vetiver, right? And so what they did is they just made it sort of fresher. And the grapefruit and bergamot lets you wear this easier in the heat. And you know what? It's brilliant. I think it's one of the best. This whole line, if you want to learn about vetiver and cypress, I would urge you to try this whole line. This is Enre Noir Sport. And then finally, we have Enre Noir à l'Extrême, the one that gets the most love in the winter time because it sort of has this ambery, you know, there's amber and benzoin in here. And one of the most amazing tricks that she did was she actually added iris to this one. So sometimes it smells like some of the other ones have a little bit of iris. This one actually has the note of iris listed. And so it's elemi in the top, which is that lemony, frankincense-like smell. Kept the cypress in the top with bergamot. Kept the bergamot from the sport fragrance. And kept the Haitian vetiver and Java vetiver. But the dry down of this one is a little different than the original Enre Noirs. And what's crazy is, even though it's called à l'extrême, I don't think there's anything extreme about this fragrance. I think it's actually really easy to wear. In fact, it might be the easiest of the three to wear, personally, because of that benzoin dry down. You know, the sort of ambery benzoin-y dry down with that warmth, you know, the warmth of benzoin. So beautiful and slightly boozy. There's almost something boozy about this version of Enre Noir, but I love it. In the winter, it's fantastic. So that is Enre Noir à l'extrême. Cypress is in the top again. Okay, next on the list is going to be a Lancome fragrance. There's a handful of Lancome fragrances that I'm going to do full reviews on the channel. One which I've talked about previously, but since we're on the subject, this is called Cuir de Lancome. If you like, oh gosh, there's a fragrance called, oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue. It is called, now I'm going to have to look it up. It's from the house of Caron, Tabac Blonde. It's called Tabac Blonde. If you like Tabac Blonde, I would urge you to see if you can find yourself a bottle of Cuir de Lancome. It's a very floral, white, feeling leather, very very powdery, like a powdery floral leather, but I absolutely love it. Even though it's not my favorite type of leather, it's a brilliant perfume. But Lancome has another fragrance for men that was actually marketed towards women. This one's marketed towards men, and it's the one to mention with cypress. It's called Balafré. Lancome's Balafré. Now, you can still buy this, but it's being marketed by L'Oreal. This is the vintage bottle, and you can see the old school style, the way they used to do the batch codes back in the day with that white writing. But this is cypress in the top. Again, I would mark this down. Mark down Balafré, but you're going to have to get the vintage if you want the proper experience. Remember, this is 1967. So the new stuff, from my understanding, I've never smelled the new one, but from my understanding, the new one has been reformulated and it's a bad reformulation from what I've heard. So this is one, and if you take a look at the vintage prices of these, they're outrageous. They are outrageous. You're probably talking $500 to $800 for 50 mils, where I've been seeing these Balafades. They're insane. But this is woody and spicy, and it opens up slightly fresh because it has this chamomile note. It's like a relaxing lavender. It's like a vintage, relaxing, spicy, woody, dries down to a little bit of a leathery, old school oak moss, masculine scent. So it has a little bit of those rough edges, and of course it's green. It actually has cypress and pine and other green notes, I feel. Maybe there's like thyme and stuff like that, mixed with more relaxing notes like the chamomile and the lavender and this ambery dry down. But there is some heavy oak moss and a little bit of leather. But it's very spicy and very traditional. If you like, you know, the masculines from that era, if you like the Aramis and the Eau Sauvages and stuff like that, I would urge you to check out Balafade. It's fantastic. It's a brilliant scent. We'll get a full review one of these days. Cypress is in the top. Next on the list is going to be a fragrance from the house of Loewe, the only Loewe on this list, and it's called 001 Man. So this is actually a modern Loewe fragrance from 2016. I will tell you though, before we talk about 001 Man, if you like cypress as a note, and you want a example of a fragrance that I think has that cypress vibe without there being a cypress note listed, check out Essentia by Loewe. This is a fantastic green. Look how green the bottle is. So if you like polo green, I would urge you to check out Essentia. It's so good. So very good. Okay, back to 001 Man. So this is sort of a 2016 release, and it's sort of a modern Essentia, or a modern Loewe fragrance, if you will, because it feels like Loewe does Dior Homme. No iris. They used a lot of carrot seed, but the cypress and the ambrette mixing with the modern woody feel and slightly powdery, but it's got this amazing, you know, this ambrette. So it's, imagine Dior Homme, right? It has the ambrette, the iris. This has the ambrette, carrot seed, but they've mixed it with very modern smelling woody notes and a brilliant violet note in the base as well. The cypress is in the heart, so it adds that green, fresh. This is a fantastic fragrance. If you like Dior Homme, I think you would love 001 Man. Very underrated. I know Zhao from Scented Moments absolutely loves this fragrance, and so do I. I mean, just an absolute gem of a fragrance. But it is very modern, so you have to like things like Dior Homme and stuff like that. Okay, next on the list is going to be a Manera. And this is actually a sample, and I'm going to review this. This is not the worst Manera. It's called Saharan Wind. So I got a little decant here. Actually, this might be 15 or 20 mils. I forget how big this decant is. But it's considered a spicy oriental. It's got pink pepper, leather, bergamot, cypress, lavender, lily of the valley, woody notes, amber, vanilla, white musk, patchouli, and tobacco. And as far as Maneras go, I've definitely smelled worse. So it does have that very punchy, almost unfinished style to it. But if you like things like Le Labo perfumes, I would urge you to sniff out Saharan Wind. There's something, I've smelled worse Maneras. Let's put it that way. That's one of the better ones. Okay, next on the list is a fragrance that I have a decant of, thanks to a friend, one of our fragrance god people. And I actually did a video. I have a review on this fragrance. It is I really enjoyed getting to know this. It's from the house of Mayo Fuscioni, and this is called Spirito. So Spirito is a 2019 release. It's so natural smelling. Like if you like your fragrances to smell natural, right? This is very herbaceous. The picture on the front is looking up at a set of trees. And you know, there's an REM album cover. Look up the album cover for the REM album Green. It looks like you're looking up at a bunch of trees. But if you really look closer, you'll notice that there's little water ripples around the outside. You're not looking up at trees, you're looking down at a reflection in the lake, right? On that album cover. And that's what this fragrance reminded me of. At first, I thought I was looking up at trees. Then I realized there's something else. There's something deeper. There's a deeper meaning to Spirito. And it really brought me back to being a little kid, my grandmother's house in Rochester, New York. And, you know, the big trees in New York. We don't get those big trees here in Texas. But there's this papery cypress in the heart of this fragrance that is just brilliant. Everything in here is very soft but very natural smelling. So if you like your fragrances to smell natural, green, spicy, natural, check out Spirito. It really gave me a positive impression of the house, and I ended up buying one. I bought this is the one I ended up buying. Where is it? What did I do with it is the question. Here it is. So I ended up buying Little Song. So I will review this. But it's a house that I actually really like. I don't think I'll go crazy buying their fragrances or anything, but I think it's a solid house. Mayo Fusione. So, so that is Spirito. Okay, next on the list is going to be a Montana fragrance. And this, I think, is a very brave release. Even though when you smell it, I think you'll get kind of traditional fougere style, right? It came out in 2004, and it's called Camorra. And I have a review of this on the channel because Keith, Manly Scents, sent me a sample of this. And outside of Parfum D'Homme, which is clearly the greatest Montana of all time, this is probably my second favorite. This or Graphite. Those two, I would say, are going to battle it out for my second favorite Montana. But this is coriander, lemon, hazelnut, lavender, rosemary, cypress in the base. So again, if you like fougere styles, fragrances, I would urge you to see if you can find Montana's Camorra. It is, the reason I say it's brave is because this came out in 2004. No one was making perfume like this in 2004. This feels like straight out of the 80s fougere. Very green, unsweet. You know, there's a little bit of that hazelnut in here, which some say it makes it like a gourmand fougere. I don't think so. I think it just adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of something else for your nose to smell. Really like that fragrance. Go check out my review if you want to learn more. Okay, next on the list is a decant, and I actually have, it's on my list. I'm going to do a early impression video on this one of these days, just a matter of getting around to it. It's from the house of M. Micallef, and this is called Royal Vintage. So Royal Vintage is supposed to be a take on Aventus. It's M. Micallef's take on Aventus, if you will. So it's bergamot, pink pepper, cypress, leather, musk, and patchouli are the notes, and the cypress is in the heart. So I'll review it. We'll see how close it is to Aventus. I hear it's a little bit different, but one of these days that's going to get a review. M. Micallef is kind of one of those houses that I'm just a little you know, they're just kind of Jeffrey Nejman and Jean-Claude Astier is the perfumers. So, okay, next on the list is a Nishan, and this is a house that I actually don't hate as much as you would expect me to. I think Nishan has some solid stuff. This is one of them. I'm going to review this one of these days too. This is B612 Extrait de Parfum. So it's kind of like a weird take on a modern fougere, right? The cypress is in the top, along with lavender and geranium. And then there's cedar, patchouli, cashmere wood, and sandalwood with oak moss, musk, and tonka bean. Christian Carbonell, aka Chris Maurice, is the perfumer. He's a good perfumer. So I'll review this one of these days or do an early impression video. But that's, again, if you like cypress, I just gave you two fougères to potentially check out. Montana's Camorra and Nishan's B612. Okay, next on the list is going to be another sample, another early impression video coming soon. And another fragrance that I actually don't mind. It's kind of spicy and smoky, but I've been coming across some very good fragrances lately. This one's called from the house of Parfum d'Empire, and this is called Wazamba. So Wazamba is kind of a spicy, smoky. Apparently it's still in production. You can still buy it. A little bit fruity in the top because it has this apple note mixed with the cypress. But this is definitely one I would put on the to sniff list if you're a cypress lover. It's got some myrrh and frankincense, and actually the fruitiness kind of works its way down because it's apple in the top, plum in the heart. And then you get resins, a Papanax and sandalwood, frankincense, stuff like that. So that'll get a early impression video one of these days. Another early impression video that's on the list is from the house of Parfums de Marly, and this is called Godolphin. So we talked about Clive Christian C as a take on Tuscan Leather. That came out 3 years after Tuscan Leather. This came out 4 years after Tuscan Leather. So this is, to me, this is like a more floral version of Tuscan Leather. You get more of the rose, jasmine, and iris to my nose. There's still a lot of saffron. They list the cypress note in the top. This is another one where it's like you're not really going to be able to pick out the cypress note like you will in some of these other fragrances I was talking to you about. But it is in there. So, I mean, you know, if you're a huge cypress nut, you can check it out. But you really have to like the smell of Tuscan Leather to go after Godolphin. You probably don't need... If you have Tuscan Leather, you probably don't need it. If you have Clive Christian C, you probably don't need it. If you have Godolphin, you probably don't need Clive Christian C or Tuscan Leather. I mean, they are very, very close. And we know which one came first and which one kind of followed. But I don't think Godolphin is a bad fragrance because I like that style of perfume. But I think for 2011 niche pricing, they should be original. Copying other houses or, you know, say inspired by other houses at that price point is a disappointment. Okay, next on the list is a Bertrand Duchaufour creation, and this is from the house of Fong Dang, which is a defunct house, I think. I don't think they're still making... It says still in production. I'm not sure. I don't see these anywhere. I don't know what's going on with this house. Maybe it is still available, but... this came out in 2016. You wouldn't think I would like this, but actually both of the fragrances I tried from this house are not bad. Hari, shout out to you, Hari. He sent me a couple of these. Well, I bought them, but, you know, he gave me very, very good prices because they're just little partial things, if memory serves. But this is lavender, rum, cardamom, cumin, green mango, pink pepper, cypress, with cinnamon, clary sage, carnation, saffron, and gaiac wood. Chocolate, sandalwood, tobacco, caramel, vanilla, cedarwood, labdanum, musk, and papyrus. So Bertrand Duchaufour is the perfumer. And the problem this house had is it was pricing itself like a premium house. So if I remember correctly, these were only sold at Barney's. And they were like $500 or $600 a bottle, right? And for 50 mil. So very premium pricing. Really, they should be like $50 to $75 a bottle. At 50 to 75 bucks a bottle, it's respectable. I don't think they're terrible fragrances. I think they were terribly priced and marketed, in my opinion. So The Calling by Fong Dang. I will review this one of these days. And then we've got a giant oak moss fragrance. Literally a lichen on the front of the bottle right here. Oak moss. And this is Mousse Illuminée from the house of Rogue Perfumery. I believe you can still buy this. I think it is still in production. This is tree moss, white musk, artemisia, bay leaf, white blossoms, cedar, frankincense, and cypress. So this is a very fluffy, mossy fragrance. Imagine like shaving foam and oak moss is what it feels like. The frankincense makes it slightly smoky, slightly even lemony in a way. Almost like you're getting citruses, but from the frankincense, if that makes sense. Like the frankincense is unlit. Let's put it that way. Not a smoky frankincense, a lemony frankincense with bay leaf and that very dark you know, Artemisia, bay leaf, cypress is the trio for the green notes in there with the tree moss, of course. But I actually really like that fragrance. It's there's something very tart about it, green and spicy and tart. But I enjoy it. I think Rogue is a solid house. I really like Manny Cross's creations. Okay, next on to one that there is a review on the channel about, and this is Roja's Apex. So again, I mentioned Z14. This is directly inspired by Z14 to my nose. You can go check out my review and see my thoughts. I mean, he Roja'd it up, so it has some other things in there. Pumped up the cistus labdanum, which I love. Added some pineapple, which instantly made people say, hey, is that a Ventus? No, it's not a Ventus. Much, much closer to Z14. But I actually liked Apex by Roja. Terrible marketing. I did not like the marketing, but I like the fragrance because it's a throwback to something like Z14, and I really like the Cypress. So if you want, you know, the Cypress style done in Z14, but you want it done in a modern way, you could consider Roja's Apex or another fragrance we'll talk about here in just a second. And then we've got Scents of Wood, which I did a live stream on some of these. This was one of them, but I will maybe do some individual reviews if I get around to it. This is Hinoki in Hinoki from 2022, last year. One of the more surprising Scents of Wood fragrance, because most of the Scents of Wood perfumes, I would say, were very, they had this kind of dark, wintry, you know, kind of like it was being distilled in like an oak barrel, and the tannins from the barrel were getting pulled off or something. They had a very interesting distilling technique, and some of their fragrances started to smell the same. This Hinoki in Hinoki, though, is very interesting because it has this very herbal, sort of natural, balsamic woodiness about it. And pepperiness. And so there's this very unique Peruvian pepper tree note in here, and it mixes with that herbal woodiness, and there's some thyme, there's Texas cedar, frankincense absolute, clove, and so there's a little bit of a woody, earthy freshness about this fragrance that kind of threw me off guard, but I ended up really enjoying it, and I like the frankincense in here, the smokiness. So Hinoki in Hinoki was done by Shakai Nomura, and he did a damn good job. Okay, next on the list is going to be Norn by the House of Slumber House, and I just reviewed one of their fragrances called Sibet, S-I-B-E-T. And Sibet came out last year. New Sibet came out in 2016. But it was a fantastic fragrance. My favorite Slumber House by far. This is a bottle that was sent to me by a friend, Jeff. Jeff very kindly sent this to me. Thank you, Jeff. It was a gift. I did not pay for this. And I struggle with this. This is a tough one for me to wrap my head around. It is, you know, one of the Slumber House faithfuls, let's say, their favorite fragrances. But if you like Cypress, you should smell this, or try to if you get a chance. There's a lot of pine, hemlock fir, cypress, lavage, sweet vernal grass. There's all of these green notes in here. Sage of some sort, violet leaf, rosemary. There's a lot of green notes. It's almost like Josh Loeb does Filan Agil, right? I much prefer Filan Agil, actually, but imagine Josh Loeb does Filan Agil. That is the feeling of Norn to me. So yes, I would urge you to smell this, although this is a very tough fragrance for me because there's something about it that, you know, it's almost like Josh Loeb took Filan Agil, sprayed it all over the forest, and then pissed all over it, you know, right there on the tree, and then bottled it. There's something very challenging about Norn, but I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna review it for you guys. And then we've got some Spirit of Dubai's. Now these are kind of tough to single out notes. I have reviews on the channel if you want to check it out. One is called Abraj, And so Abrage is kind of the fresher. Whoops, that's Bahar. That's not right. It is the gray one, not the white one. But I do have reviews on these Spirit of Dubai's if you want to check them out. So it is, yes, Abrage. So Abrage is fresh, spicy. They're not bad fragrances. I actually really enjoyed getting to know them. The prices are outrageous though. And there's so many notes listed. You know, the note listings are like 100 deep. Like they have, like, you know, the note listing on this one is actually one of the smaller ones. And it's bergamot, cardamom, pink pepper, saffron, damask rose, lavender, petitgrain, pine, black pepper, cedarwood, cypress, red rose, geranium, leather, thyme, violet, jasmine, patchouli, sandalwood, amber, benzoin, musk, oud, tree moss, vanilla, cypriol, and oak moss. And that's one of the smallest note listings for this house. So, you know, they're kind of like in the Roja style. Like, imagine Roja does Middle Eastern fragrances. And so, not bad fragrances, but I'm not going to go shell out the money that they're asking for. But Abrage has cypress in there, as does Maydon. Maydon's the green one. It was the one that I had kind of one of the most hopes for. And it let me, I wouldn't say it let me down, because it kind of did let me down. Maydon I was expecting a lot more from. Now, I think they re-released it in the next collection as a fragrance called Abrage. No, that was the one we just talked about. They re-released it in the next collection as a fragrance called Abjar. And I think I smelled that. Maybe I even have a video on Abjar, and I think I liked it even better. I liked it better than Maydon. Like, they took it to the next level finally. But that's like a $1,200 fragrance. So it's, to me, it's just, the house is out of reach. Although, if you gave me a bottle, would I wear it? Yes, I do like the scent enough where I would wear it. But technically, Maydon does have a cypress note in there in the top, but you're going to have a hard time picking it out because it's blended with a million other notes that give it that Middle Eastern style. So, okay, just something to mention. Next on the list, we have a decant of a fragrance, thanks to my good friend Rich Mitch, that I plan on doing a video on one of these days. This is called Pure Wood. So Pure Wood's one of the discontinued Amen series. This is cypress, vanilla, patchouli, coffee, and oak. And I actually really like these flankers from the house of Thierry Mugler. I think they're fantastic designer fragrances. When you can get these for 50 bucks, they were just amazing deals. So I'll review Pure Wood one of these days. And then again, get your little asterisk marking pen out if you are in the market for a if you're in the market for a cypress fragrance and you have the money to blow, Tom Ford's Italian Cypress is fantastic. Galbanum, peppermint, mandarin orange, bergamot, cypress, basil, carnation, patchouli, moss, and labdanum. So these two, the Roja, which came out a couple years ago, or 2022, and Tom Ford's Italian Cypress, which came out in 2008, are kind of the modern takes on Halston Z14. But Tom Ford was very, very moved by Z14. It was a scent that meant a lot to him, from my understanding. And then a fragrance that I have a review on the channel of, but I could not find the decant. It has to be here somewhere. I just couldn't find it. Tom Ford's Sahara Noir from 2013. It's on my wish list, my full bottle wish list. It's bitter orange, cistus, cypress, calamus, frankincense, beeswax, cinnamon, papyrus, jasmine, rose, frankincense again, resins, balsams, benzoin, cedar, labdanum, ambrenyol, oud, and vanilla. And so the cypress is in the top, but that's a huge labdanum. One of the best labdanum fragrances I've smelled that's not in my collection. Love Sahara Noir from Tom Ford. Wish I would have been able to get a bottle. And then, speaking of discontinued gems, this is Gem by the house of Van Cleef and Arpels. If you like Rochas Femme, I would urge you to try to find a bottle of this. This is fantastic stuff. Absolutely fantastic. I love this fragrance. It's spicy, it's floral, it's oriental. It's got that thick, old school 80s plum with iris, orris, clove, carnation. There's a lot of florals in here. Tuberose rose, ylang ylang. There's some animalic civet in the base, so it's a dirty oriental style. And the cypress is in the top. So this is the third women's fragrance on this list, along with Kesh and the other women's fragrance that had was Fendi. So Fendi, Kesh, and Van Cleef & Arpels Gem were the three that had a cypress note marketed towards women. Not something you see very often. There's also a beautiful rosewood note in here. Oh my God, this fragrance, man. If you like things like opium, if you like things like Chanel's Coco, the original Coco from the 80s, if you like things like Roche's Femme, I would urge you to check out Gem. Gem is, it really is a gem. I'll do a full review of this one of these days. And then, a couple more, and we're getting down to the end. We're over an hour, so next on the list we have a YSL fragrance. It's a flanker of Jazz, which is one of my favorite designer fragrances of all time. This is Jazz Prestige. So Jazz Prestige is like an easier to swallow Jazz. It's more fruity. So they added this sort of fruitiness to it, and the cypress is also a note that they added. It's in the heart, okay? But this is kind of there is supposedly real Mysore sandalwood in these older bottles of Jazz Prestige as well. It's listed on the box, but yeah, I like it. I would rank Jazz, the OG, just a little bit above this in my taste, but Jazz Prestige is still very, very good. And finally, an Ensar, as I drop it, an Ensar fragrance that I did a review on. I have a full review on this if you want to check it out. Not my favorite Ensar. Actually, maybe one of my least favorite Ensars, although it's still very, very good. I would wear it if I had a bottle. It's just not my favorite. It's got this Peau oud. It's a very spicy, smoky, green style oud. And, you know, it's cut with fig and black tea and stuff like that. But there's a blue cypress note in the heart. And it is Ensar's Marok Maharaji. Sorry, Marok Maharaja. And, you know, look how green. It's like your dark green. It's like your I bet you there's a lot of Ruchas in here is my guess. Even though there's just a note of vetiver listed, I think he used a lot of Ruchas. So that is my Cypress list. An hour and 17 minutes of Cypress talk. So I hope you guys appreciate the effort and time that goes into these. We talk about a lot of fragrances. I hope you learned something. I hope you jot down some notes on some fragrances you want to smell, or maybe you made some connection here or there. You know, these fragrance videos are fun for me, where we just talk about a lot of different fragrances. I love doing them for you guys. Now it's time for me to go hit the gym, work out, and go to bed because I have to go to work. So cheers, guys. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. Leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what your favorite Cypress fragrances are. Let me know if there's any that I left out or that I don't have in the collection that I should consider at some point in the future. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.